Everybody, thank you very much for calling back tonight for another open mic night here at the Pigsty. We're very lucky tonight. We have got some special guests. We've got Jim Majors and Maya from the start. We've got Junk Shop and we have Tug. Everybody's sick of Dave. We're always looking at him. But tonight we're going to focus on is indoctrination. You know, the pros and cons of indoctrinating children. Perfect example would be Jim. Jim spent an awful lot of his life in studying and heading down that way. So what we'll do is we'll start with you, Jim, if you want to just introduce yourself and let everyone know who you are.
Sure. Hi, everybody. My name is Jim Majors. I am many things. I'm on YouTube. I don't consider myself a YouTuber, but I'd love your subscription. YouTube.com/Jim Majors. I'm on Twitter @the Jim Majors. YouTube or Facebook Jim Majors. I do anti-apologetics, counter arguments for popular apologetic arguments. Really fond of doing debates. I am also a PhD candidate in Old Testament studies, Hebrew Bible, with a focus on the Book of Daniel and Jewish rebellion in the 2nd century BCE. And I'm happy to be here.
Boom. And Rib just joined, and we have Nakasuchi as well. Perfect. So I'll get to you guys in just 1 wee second. Maya, if we want to move on to yourself.
Hi, I'm Maya. I don't have a channel. I just like talking and productive conversations and representing Black people and women in the non-community.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you very much, Maya. Rib, can you hear us okay, man?
I can hear you perfectly, man, yeah?
Yeah, well, I know you're late in, but you're next in my line, so you've slipped in front of Junk Shop. Go on, let everyone know who you are.
Oh, no. Well, I am a very argumentative atheist, as most of you seen last night. I'm as I kind of said last night, which I'm now going to make my tagline. I am anywhere where there is an argument to be had.
Perfect description. Perfect description. Tug, would you like to let everyone know if are you free?
Would I? No.
Should you? Maybe.
Yeah. I don't know. I just do conversations on my channel, and I go on other people's channel and have chit chats. If you want to subscribe, you can. That's it.
Junk Shop, you had your mental health interview today, Mental Health Thursdays, and you also do the smiting.
Yes. I'm a Junk Shop library on all the social media, Facebook accepted. But Mental Health Thursday is a hangout for mental health sharing and caring. We do that every Thursday. And also the smiting, where we take apart the King James Bible according to what it actually says on the page and with not a great deal of exegesis or interpretation from an atheist humanist standpoint. We do that 3 times a week.
Lots of fun. Everybody likes to smite. And Nakasuchi, thank you very much, man, for joining us. I know you were trying to get something deep there, so I appreciate you coming in. Thank you.
Oh yeah, I'm glad that I caught this. I'm not streaming today. John covered it, so I'm just kind of chill. So yeah, thanks for having me on.
Perfect, thank you, man. And everybody should already know who the Rage is. If you haven't, I'm sure Dave been posting links for everybody as the chat goes along. One thing I will ask everyone in the chat if they can do, as everyone who watched last night, I did move to a new studio yesterday and the fucking audio on my end was woeful last night. So I've been fucking about with it all day. If it doesn't sound right on my end, if my mic doesn't sound right, please let me know. Tag me in the chat, tag Dave, he'll let me know. But hopefully it should be coming through okay. So other than that, we'll just dive right into it, and I'm going to use and abuse Jim as the way he likes it. And Jim, I think this is very poignant to your backstory, so if you want to just give everyone a wee sort of backstory of your backstory, a wee short version of your backstory, and let them know.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, just to keep it relevant, I myself am a victim of childhood indoctrination, specifically religious indoctrination. I was raised in the Pentecostal church. I was actually a Pentecostal pastor. I went to seminary to become a Pentecostal pastor. Taught in my family church, was raised to believe that the Bible is the inerrant and infallible Word of God. And yeah, I mean, that's in a nutshell. That's it. I escaped indoctrination, gosh, about 7 years ago now.
Well, that's one thing I wanted to point out. I'm very glad that you did make a mention of that. It is the fact that it's religious indoctrination that's specific to you.
Sure.
Because as a whole, the argument could be made that indoctrination does have an awful lot of benefits for kids. It just, indoctrinate them that the world is a globe and things like that. That's all good. And it's good information to portray in the child. It depends on the indoctrination, but specifically with yourself.
Well, it's not only that indoctrination can be good, but I mean, indoctrination in and of itself, indoctrination of a child is it's inevitable. It's something that can't be helped. I mean, because a child is going to learn from something, and that's essentially what indoctrination is to teach a belief, and whether through mimicking or through actual teaching, a child is going to be indoctrinated.
Yeah, kids are sponges. It's Manda, anyone who knows Mama Atheist in the chat, Manda shouts at me because I sit like Al Bundy on the sofa. And I've been doing it that much that my wee girl started doing it, and it's definitely not something that you want a nice little girl to be sitting on the seat with her hand down the front of her trousers like it's no. Maya, have you anything you would like to add there?
Yeah, I guess definitely indoctrinated. I went to Catholic school for technically 12 years. I went to a Catholic preschool, and then my parents divorced when I was in high school, so I only got 2 years in there. So yeah, we had religion class every day. So I mean, really, Saturday was my only day off. It was such a large Catholic town. I didn't realize, like, you heard about other stuff. I didn't think atheists were real. And like other religions, it's like, well, yeah, that's what they do in other countries. Like, it just didn't really occur to me that that other things were real. Like when you're surrounded by it, and it's like Jim's saying, when it's all like I wouldn't have had to be sat at a desk and taught and memorized, all the things, but I would have just naturally picked up on it. Like you would have come, like my brother, his mom actually did kind of the opposite thing. I was so mad at her when I was growing up. I was like, how can you not like send your son to church? And she was like, well, I want him to choose. And I'm like, well, how are we supposed to choose if you don't tell him what to choose?
Yeah.
My brother to hell. I was so mad at her for that. He goes to church every Sunday though, because again, it's ubiquitous. And how do you not believe in a God when everybody believes in God?
Indoctrination becomes something that's, as you say, it's not something that you have to go to class to do. Because you're surrounded in it, because everybody's reinforcing it and everybody accepts it around you, it becomes what we say over here, ingrained in you. You don't have to think, everybody knows the certain verses, they know this, that, and the other that happens because it's been ingrained in you from such a young age.
Mm-hmm.
Tug, we'll move over to you to get a Christian point of view.
I don't know if you can throw Christian on there and, like it means anything. It really doesn't. I'd say it's just another point of view. Like I said, what I had to say really wasn't much, and it was like in family, education, government, regional, with strangers and religion. These all play in indoctrination. And what I mean by that is it all plays out to what we learn. And we learn certain things through religion or through other systems. And it's not really whether it's like, I can see the parallel on this is more focused on religion, but it's a matter what people do with, like, I guess, government and religion, how those two can fight against each other with different ideologies. And that's the problem, is like that would be the con of it, is that we learn different things and that other people oppose those things that we learn. The pro is that we still learn. But I'd say, like, in conclusion, we get what we get and hopefully decide for ourselves what we would know to be true.
Well, you see, that's why we specifically picked the title. Dave, if he's still up there and he hasn't fallen asleep, he did want to use religion in the title and did sort of want to go down that. I knew we were going to end up with mainly atheists, and I didn't want a group of us just sitting here going, when you teach your child that it's child abuse, we can't go down that route and screaming and shouting and all the rest of it. Because, indoctrination generally has that stereotypical view, especially in our community. If we say indoctrination, it's a bad word. We use the word education, but pardon, Dave?
If you tell people over and over again that they are bad and they are going to go to hell, it traumatizes them.
I mean, the same thing's done in the school system. If you're bad, you're going to go to jail. It's same thing's given. And people get scared of that way, and it's all done.
Not really.
Cause.
That's if you commit a crime.
Religious crime sometimes mingles with actual crimes.
Well, and there might be a bit of a difference between going to jail and maybe getting out someday and burning forever.
I mean, if you go there for life in prison and then you go to electric chair, you go for death. I mean, that's kind of the same thing.
Well, you have to do something really, really serious to get the electric chair. Childhood indoctrination for me has been an interesting discussion. I've had it a couple times now on my channel. The last one was probably the most positive one, and I can't remember his name, but he was a really great interlocutor, and he came on and we had a really healthy conversation about it. But it does seem to affect Christians in a certain way when you talk about it, and I've noticed that, and they'll attack you just for even bringing up the question of it. But I found with this indoctrination, it's a whole new animal than trying to convince somebody that Trump's like a bad president or something. When you're going against something people learned as children from their parents, who were the highest authority figures from them, you are fundamentally going against everything that they believe in to their core, and they're gonna fight that tooth and nail. And it's because of that indoctrination. It's when you learn this thing at such a young age, you're most probably the age to where you're learning more than any time in your life, maybe except for when you first come into the world. I don't know, something. It seems intentional that they're utilizing that age to really indoctrinate fundamentalism, at least.
Kids, they're like a sponge the first 5 years, whether you want to or not, and especially using a personal anecdote with my own daughter at the minute being 3, as I just mentioned earlier, she picks up and I want to be just like daddy, want to do the same things as daddy does. And, the dog jumped up on her and the dog near knocked her over. So I smacked the dog in the nose, told him to get down. And then later on in the day, he did something very minute, like just bump into her. And she turned around and smacked him on the nose. And I said, no, you don't do that. And they have to learn the difference, not saying the difference between beating your dogs, but you understand the point I'm trying to put across.
Sure.
Personally, recently I had a conversation with my mother, and I'm not going to dox my mother's age or anything like that, but she's my mum and I'm fucking 30, nearly 40. And she's been a Christian her entire life. I've always referred to my mother as a spiritual Christian, but when we went through this conversation, I asked her when the last time she prayed was. She prayed because Manda went into hospital. I asked her a question. I was like, right, I've fallen down the stairs. I've fallen down the stairs. Do you stop and pray, or do you get into the car to come help me? She's like, I'm obviously going to come help you. It's like, yes, because it's within your power to come and actually do that. The fact that Manda's in another country and going through surgery, praying isn't really to help Manda. Praying is more for you to feel better about the fact you can't do fuck all about it. And we went down this conversation, and it basically boiled down to the fact that she doesn't want to go to hell. She still completely believes that, whether there's heaven or pantheism or anything like that, we went down sort of that route and the deistic route and had that conversation, but it was, hell still existed. And no matter whether it was a Christian or this or whatever her beliefs was, hell was still a big part of her beliefs, and that's why she still believed in something, because I don't want to go to this eternal hell and damnation. My mother's a good person, and still the fear of that, 50 years down the line.
It's a hard one for people to get through. I've heard people say that they had put every other aspect of religion away, decades ago, but they'll still have dreams of hell, as if it's like the rational mind is just like, oh no, this can't be a thing. But, somewhere in their subconscious, it's still a real thing. I know for me, I couldn't get past Christianity until like I really did a deep dive on like the history of hell. And it wasn't until I was like, oh, it is bullshit. Like that's when I could finally let go. But for a lot of people, if they're not, part of the religion is not questioning God, because God, that will upset God, and then he must smite you. So there's a superstition attached to even learning the truth.
Well, hell for me was the last belief that I held on to. I mean, for 2 years, I struggled with my faith while preaching, and what I consider the last day before I became an atheist. I was praying to God, and I was begging Him, and I'd already lost the belief in like a heaven with the streets of gold and the pearly gates, and the mansion that He has gone to prepare for us, and all these other things. But hell, I was so worried about an eternity of torture and torment and suffering and pain that I was just pleading with God, just begging Him, crying myself on my knees, just saying, just God, please, just if you exist, like I need to know, because I cannot do this. Like you know my heart, and you know how hard I've been seeking you. And I cried myself to sleep that night. And I still believe that when I woke up the next morning, that was my first day as an atheist. But it's either the carrot or the stick that sticks with the person. It's either the idea of a reward or the fear of a punishment that sticks with the person, that keeps them in that indoctrination. Because when we're children, we don't have these we don't have the parameters for possible knowledge that or potential knowledge, or for parameters of our own perception of reality, until we're given them, or until we learn them. So when you're indoctrinated as a child, you're given these parameters, and you're given these parameters that have strong moral implications, that say, this is what's good, this is what's bad, this is what happens if you're good, this is what happens if you're bad. And as a child, you already rely on your parent to show you what's good or bad, whether it's through reward or through punishment or through just simple teaching. And so you're not in a position to question, and you don't have the tools to test that, to consider what they're teaching. You're not equipped.
Well, yeah, and through that indoctrination, you're literally learning as a human being how to deal with death by using that faith, and going to heaven, going to hell. It was the same way for me, Jim. Like hell belief was probably the hardest thing for me to give up. It was the thing that I held on to, even years after I became an atheist, as Maya was speaking to. I probably for a decade after becoming an atheist, I would have those nightmares about hell. Now I've read Dante's Inferno. I've read, all the things that would give me those nightmares. But it literally took me doing what Maya was suggesting, really looking into the history of hell, seeing where it came from. And then I was able to just get rid of it. And I haven't had a nightmare in probably 10 years.
My mom, she grew up Christian. She was actually raised Mormon, but whenever she met my dad, he was Pentecostal, and so she converted to Pentecostalism. And she's out of everybody that I know, she more than anybody knows the struggles that I went through as a Christian, and not just the struggles, but my desire, my pursuit for God, just the sincerity of my attempt to believe, my attempt to discover who God was. She was there, when I was taking my siblings to church when my parents wouldn't, when I was going to church when other people wouldn't, when I was reading a Bible instead of comics, when I was going to Bible college instead of, going to some party school. And she would come to me just like any of my other family members. Most of them still to this day will come to me if they have a question about the Bible, because they acknowledge and recognize that I have done my work, that I have done my research. I have spent my time in and behind the pages searching for the truth. And my mom has told me, that she has broken down to me one time, and she said, I don't know. You know, I don't know if there's a God. I'm not sure that there's a God. But her thing is my grandfather passed away 6 years ago, about a year and a half after I became an atheist, and it was really hard on all of us. My mom especially. She was a daddy's girl, and she, you know, but she always kept in close contact. And she told me she calls me Bubba. She said Bubba, the only thing that keeps me holding on is the hope that one day I can see my father again. Just one day that I can see people again. And so that's what she's holding on to, that hope of a reward, that she will be rewarded for her continued faith, even though she completely doubts it. She'll be rewarded and be able to see her dad again. That's what's keeping her holding on, and it's because she was indoctrinated, like Rage just said. You know, that's you're raised to believe that there's a hope that you will see your loved ones again in heaven. But I don't know why they don't teach that we'll see our loved ones in hell, because we all know that the ones who probably went to hell were the cool aunts and uncles anyways.
That's what I was gonna say, right? You know,
and saying that though, I had recently a conversation with a person who has I don't know, found God, found Jesus again, and one of the things that they said to me is something similar to what you said, Jim, is that the fact that they, you know, want there to be an afterlife, and they want there to be something afterwards. They don't want all of this to be this. And,
Yep.
you know, that's a step and a stage that we all go through, because at the end of the day, we all would like that. You know, don't get me wrong. I'd like to see my granddad again.
I do.
You know, I have no problem in saying that I would like there to be an afterlife and like there to be something afterwards. It doesn't necessarily mean that I believe in it or that there's a guarantee that there is or isn't. But yeah, you know, barely remember my mother's father. I'd like to get to know the man, and there's things that you can want. It doesn't restrict you from still referring to yourself as an atheist, though, or getting to that point. As that should not be an excuse for believing in Christianity, is what the point I'm trying to make.
Sure, I agree.
Well, I mean, yeah, it shouldn't, but I mean, it's huge. You know, I mean, we should be good citizens just because, you know, it's the right thing to do. But a lot of people are only motivated by not going to jail. So I mean,
yeah.
I mean, realistically, sorry.
Go ahead.
I was saying that, I mean, realistically, that, I mean, in society, that there are some people who need those parameters put in place for them because they have a faulty perception of the parameters of what is societally acceptable. And that in itself can be because of indoctrination of some sort, you know, that they were taught that a certain act isn't all that bad. You know, if they're doing it for this person, it's justified one way or another. But the problem is that, I mean, realistically, we can be indoctrinated as adults, and we are often. But with a child, it's so much easier because they don't have that understanding of you know, of the capabilities of their perception. You know, is it everything that I imagine is possible, or are some things only possible, or should I trust my parents inherently? You know, and that is often the first indoctrinated belief that the children come to believe, is that their parents are reliable and trustworthy.
Which we are definitely not. Anybody who has any kids will definitely realize, you know, you do your best and you go to bed, and, you know, at the end of the day, and you sit there and you're like, did I fuck up? How many times did I fuck up the day? You know, and you just, only thing you can do.
You don't have to have kids. You
can just try and be better the next day.
Say, man, they fucked up.
You know, the things you have to do, you've got a child screaming and you're sitting there going, honey, calm down. And in your head, you're going, I'm going to kill you if you don't shut your mouth. You know?
I will shake you until you stop talking.
Like the first Christian, like when I first started doing YouTube, it was another channel, and I was talking with a coworker, and he was a deeply fundamental Christian. He had really long hair, this really thick, or not really thick, but like really Jesus beard. We called him Jesus. Wondered why he never came to work in his Birkenstocks. And you know, like I started doing YouTube, just like having conversations with him, and it was just me, him, and a webcam, no audio. I mean, it was really, really crappy. But one of the things that he told me, and it always stuck to me, it was like, if he woke up one day and he knew for a fact that there wasn't God, the Christian God that he believes in, that he would kill himself. And it always stuck with me. Like he thinks that, and he would literally say that there would be no way for him to be a good person anymore, because it's because of God that he's a good person. It's because of God that he doesn't go out and rape and murder and kill. And like, he's saying this to me in all seriousness, and it's just always stuck with me as the example of a really deep indoctrination. Like, because I really liked this guy, but he was so just brainwashed by this idea that without God he couldn't be a good human being.
Yeah.
One thing that I do find, especially seeing as we're on the topic of the Christianity as well, and to give a wee bit of power to Maya, is the fact that because it's such a hierarchy where it's God, man, and the rest of everybody else, the fact that that's ingrained into you such as a child, obviously, you know, a lot of us can't experience that, but it is something that slows everybody down. It slows the production of society down. It slows the equality of society down, because you've raised your life going, ask your father. You know,
there's a couple of ways that it slows down society. So I remember, oh God, 20 years maybe, when the whole stem cell thing was going on. You know, like Christians are literally slowing down science, and not just that, like on so many different levels. Like why the fuck should creationism be taught in schools? Just in so many different levels of we are like hindering science with these silly notions of, you know, this morality that comes from this 3,000-year-old book. And the other way is, I'm going to say, one, the justice system, because it is kind of based on this system of punishment and retribution, like you see in the Abrahamic religions. And then there's also this psychological way that it slows us down. So our brains learn. The reason it's harder to teach old dog new tricks is because you have these neural pathways, and then once you learn something, the older you get, the more solidified it gets, and then it just literally, it's not impossible, but it literally is harder for me at 40 to learn something completely new than it would have been for me at 20. And that's why to this day, my son still has to reprogram my mom's TV every time she moves, because she just can't get her mind around it. But if we're taught, like, okay, must believe in God or must rape and kill from a very young age, you get to 30. And I mean, it's just like, must look at the world this way. You know, must hate gay and trans people, must, you know, we're making it harder on all of us to move forward. There's a lot of ways that, and I'm not an anti-theist, I'm not. I believe that we can live peacefully with the religious. I think that our congressmen need to stop enabling them and make it a lot easier. But you're right, they are holding us back.
Well, I mean, and I like that you mentioned that about the neural pathways and the problems with like relearning these things that we have already learned and that have already established, you know, these neural pathways, these reliable pathways, and that's why children are the easy victims. And I find it so funny that Christians proclaim this idea of a gift of free will given to them by God. And they say that that's because God is good, that he allows us the right to choose for ourselves. And yet they see no problem with refusing their child the same freedom to choose, because religious indoctrination inherently takes away a child's right to decide for themselves. Like if a parent who is very likely a victim of religious indoctrination themselves is convinced that certain regressive positions, like what Maya was talking about, the dehumanizing attitudes towards LGBT folks, if they're convinced that sort of position is morally justified, even though it's a baseless view and harmful view, and that they have no foundation in reality for it, it's still an illusion of a moral imperative to that parent that they will pass on to that child, whether it's justified or not. And the fact of the matter is that a child who's indoctrinated with these regressive dogmatic teachings from religion, they will statistically be much more likely than a child who isn't indoctrinated indoctrinate their future children with the same regressive beliefs. And that's the problem, is that it turns into dogma and it gets passed on.
Dave, have you anything to add? You're very quiet, as is Rib and Junk Shop. You just want to jump in if there's anything you just want to add? And Brian, thank you very much for joining us.
The problem,
You know, I was just gonna say, like, the only kind of like negative aspect of indoctrination that's kind of usually linked with a belief system is that so like I personally, yes, of course I personally was like, I was brought up Catholic and stuff like that, and I, you know, left and whatever, and I'm an atheist now. But the negative experience that I had with it was that 4 friends of mine now don't speak to me anymore, and haven't since, and haven't for years. And they have said the fact that, like, oh, that because I'm an atheist now, and, you know, like, we had a lot of conversations about it when I first came out as being atheist, and they basically kind of said that because they have tried, and that because they can't sway me from the path of hell, and that that's where I'm destined to go, that if they were to continue hanging out with me, that there was like a chance that that could happen to them, and they don't want to take that risk, yada yada yada. And so, yeah, I've lost friends of a few years because of religion.
So we can confirm then, Rib, you are infectious.
It's somewhat, yeah.
I mean, that's an
Not with
interesting
COVID now, but with other
perspective, right?
things.
Like,
Sorry?
I never thought to cut somebody off because their logic would make me, you know, think false thoughts. Like, if God is true, then like an atheist can make me not believe in something that's true. I don't understand that.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm not going to say that they had sound logic. They didn't, but
Right.
and I do personally think as well that, you know, that we can kind of live in harmony, and it doesn't have to be this kind of battleground. A battleground of ideas, sure, and like debate and conversation and stuff, but like we can
here's the
live
problem.
peacefully with each other.
Yeah, that's where I'm
We
at.
are wait. We are infectious is the problem. The whole indoctrination relies on being unchallenged.
Yeah.
You've got to be told over and over again something. If that's not challenged, you don't think that a God might not exist until someone actually suggests it. At which point the wall can come tumbling down. So in a certain way, they're not wrong that we're infectious.
No, yeah, I believe that. I just wouldn't think a Christian would, which is why it was so interesting to me. And I'm sorry, Junk Shop, I think I cut you off.
Oh no, you didn't cut me off, Dave did.
Well, these neural pathways that we build whenever we build these beliefs, you know, it's like carving out a canyon with a river, and the water is just flowed. Like, it naturally flows that way. It's like muscle memory. It knows where to go, and it's like trying to divert that river, trying to change the direction of it. It's possible, but it requires so much persistence and so much effort, and the river itself, you know, has to want to change. You know, it has to want to change its course.
I don't know. When I was tired of arguing with my husband about why I wasn't going to be Christian anymore, like, the kids came right on over it. They're like, "What? No evil thing that, you know?" They're like, "Yeah, we're all about this." I used to every Sunday just blast the Atheist Experience in the middle of the living room. And
Yeah.
you know, after about a year or so, he was just like, "Okay, so what I hear the atheist saying is," you know,
right. Well, because you got to him when the river was a creek, you know, where you didn't have to dig very deep to divert that water. You know, it's not as deep, not as wide, and it's not as used to flowing in that direction. You know, it's still trying to find its way. And I mean, I think that by I mean, we're going to indoctrinate our kids, and I have 4 of them, and I already have regrets as to how I've raised them. Every parent does.
I'm perfect.
Every parent, except for probably bad parents. Perfect. I think that, like, the worst parents probably don't have any regrets. But one of my regrets is, like, you know, I wreck my brain thinking, like, man, like, what did I teach them that isn't justified? Because I know that I have false beliefs myself, you know, and I realized later than I should have that I should have realized this before I had kids, that the best way to teach your children and to raise your children is to give them the tools to think and to gauge reality with. You don't tell them what reality is, you know, show them how to discover
That's
reality.
exactly what I was trying to say, Jim, but you do love to talk, don't you?
I do love to talk. I'm sorry, this is why I don't get
No, it's fine, man. I'm
I
only winding
had
you
a
up. But
thought.
good, you know, bringing it back to the whole question of the topic is indoctrinating your kids the pros and cons. You know, as Jim was saying, one of the pros is, and what we will try to, what I will personally try to do, and what we should try to do with our kids is teach them how to think, not what to think, but how to think. You know, let them out into the world with the tools and the capabilities, especially now in this modern age when we all know when they're 10 and 11 and 12. By the time my wee girl is 10, 11 and 12, she'll probably have a holographic watch that she can go onto the fucking internet. School will be completely different, and it's being able to tell the difference between misinformation and actual facts. It's not being able to tell, or, you know, being able to discern what's real and what's not. The ability to think and not what to think.
Yeah. Well, and that's where I would draw the line between education and indoctrination. Teaching someone how to think is what education should be. Like, here are the brute facts of the universe. Like you said, you know, teaching the world is round.
Yeah,
sure.
I bought her a fucking ball,
but that's
when she
not
was like less than a year
indoctrination.
old.
That's education. And yes, teach them, you know, basic logic and how to read and what's the difference between a good source and a bad source. But teaching them what to think is indoctrination. And that's the one thing, I mean, I have a very narrow focus personally. I am against Christian indoctrination. I think it's toxic, I think it's damaging, and I think it creates lifelong trauma.
Would you
I know it
expand
did for me.
Would you expand that to Abrahamic indoctrination, just in general, or Christian specifically?
I don't know enough about Judaism or Islam to be able to say.
Well,
And honestly, that's not my fight. I was traumatized by Christianity, and so that's what I'm online fighting against. There are lots of ex-Muslims and some ex-members of the Judaic faith who can fight that in that army, but that's not my experience, so that's not what I can voice.
If you want to learn about Muslim indoctrination, Knox got stuff over on his channel pretty regularly with some people who were escaping Islam or had escaped Islam. Is that right, Rage?
Oh yeah, we just had we just had a great conversation for our monthly Women of Atheism roundtable, and it was all ex-Muslims, and they were talking about their childhood indoctrination as women in Islam, and yeah, it was very, very fascinating. And I just want to say that I am completely and 100% agreement with what Junk Shop said. Is saying I have seen the dangerous aspects of Abrahamic indoctrination. I've seen it in Native American reservations through a completely different religion and faith. So yeah, I just wanted to agree, but you're exactly right. Like Junk Shop, if you are interested in maybe learning some of what happens in Islam, I know I've probably seen you there a couple times, but yeah, we do cover it every Sunday.
Well,
Apostate Alliance. It's a great show.
If I can be so bold, you know, for those who were raised, you know, in just one religion like Christianity, and they're not really aware of the other religions and their preconceptions, and even amongst Abrahamic faiths, I mean, I can save you some time and just say simply that all Abrahamic faiths promise. They promise pain and suffering. They promise an eternity of suffering for not believing. They wish harm upon people who are not like them. And many other religions that are not Abrahamic also believe the same. But if any religion, any belief system that is based on a punishment reward system and that is decided mostly on whether or not you believe in that God. I mean, right off the bat, I would say that is an immoral belief structure and is not productive to indoctrinate a child with.
Well, going out to my audience, most of my audience, I think 87% of it is American. Right now, we have 3 UK on the channel. We have 3 fathers on the channel that have all had kids. You know, everybody's my channel. You've all heard my views and how I intend to raise my kids. You've had a wee bit of Dave. Like God, being God, you know, have you raised your kids? Have you mentioned religion? What is, you know, you've got kids of teenage age.
You treated some like shit.
In total honesty, right? I became an atheist when I was really young, and I'm from a massive Catholic family. Okay, we're not the worst of religion in Catholics, but we're up there, and so I've educated my children enough to make them make their own decisions on fact, and I think my children were really, really young, maybe 5 or 6 year old when they said to me, "Look, this is nonsense." I think you've got to let them you tell them every story, but you let them make their own decisions. And thankfully, my children were clever enough to make the decision that God is nonsense. And now my children are 16, 18, and 21. They hate the fact that I'm God, but they understand that I do it to annoy people.
You're very good at it too.
Great. As long as I'm successful at it, that's all it matters.
Brian, have you anything that what about you? You know, you've had a religious background. Do you raise your kids with any sort of?
So maybe I'm an exception here. I'm actually a cradle atheist. My parents were very about critical thinking and about letting us kind of feel things out on our own. They did let me go down some woo paths there, my late teens and stuff. Just kind of went along with my goth days.
Good man.
To explore like paganism and stuff like that. But I never felt like I was indoctrinated. I had a lot of friends because I grew up in the Bible Belt, and a lot of friends that were heavily into the church. And if I'd stay the night with them, we'd kind of go on a Sunday morning. And from an outsider's perspective, seeing people with their small children in there doing stand up, sit down, sing this song, was a very bizarre experience to my young self. But I've been accused of being indoctrinated, like by my education. Oh, you're indoctrinated into scientism and stuff like that. But I don't think that holds any water. I'm actually, these things are verifiable. I'm not just believing things on doctrine in that course.
Well, you know yourself that I've talked to your son a couple of times, and you sent me a link to some stuff that he's done on YouTube, and I can definitely say that you can see the critical thinking, you can see the top. Very intelligent lad. The production that he's done is better than all of our production put together. I swear to fuck, like.
My kids are my kids are all I don't think they identify as anything. My oldest, he's 16, and I'd say he's pretty well would identify as an agnostic atheist, kind of following in my footsteps there. But the younger two, I don't think that they're old enough. I got a 12-year-old and an 8-year-old. I don't think either of them are old enough for me to expect them to have a label for themselves, or expect them to even have made that kind of decision about a.
Are they aware of it? Because I know now that my wee 3-year-old, coming from, she spends half the week with her mother, and their family is from the south of Ireland originally, and they are staunch Catholics, as in, rosary beside the bed, and oh my goodness, Reb, I should tell you a story about the fucking blessing of the graves. Yeah, I'm not allowed to talk to her aunt anymore. It's very religious, so I know that my wee girl is surrounded by this sort of stuff. Sorry, Rib?
No, you're fine. I was just saying, all right, okay, that sounds like an interesting story. I
Yeah.
have an idea of where it might be going, but okay.
Imagine about 15 very staunch Catholics all wanting someone to go to the blessing of a grave and a drunk atheist over in the corner telling them all to go fuck themselves. That's pretty much what it went like.
Oh man, I'm in your club. I'm in the club of telling people to, oh, fuck off.
Yeah, pretty much. But I know that that Elena is aware of this. So I'm. It's not that I'm expecting her to start asking questions or things like that. And obviously at her age, and even up to the age of maybe 10, I still wouldn't expect her to come forward to me and go, Daddy, I'm a Christian, or I believe in God. But, I don't expect in your house you have a cross hanging on the wall or a picture of Mary, where there is in her house, if you understand. Have your kids ever come up to you and asked you that? Look at that there. Well, you have to have a cross. Although that's very vindictive considering that that's what killed your son. But
my daughter, she believes in God. I let my mom take her to church, and it's a decision that I regret. And I often worry about like how I indoctrinate my child without trying to indoctrinate her, right? Like just like for me being me and her being around what I do. And thankfully my child doesn't go to church anymore, but I struggle with that. And I had all of this pressure from my family, and I wasn't a YouTuber back then. I wasn't really strong with my atheism. I was pretty much still in the closet. And I didn't want to fight that battle. And I think that a lot of atheists go through that with their children. It's a very hard thing to go through. And, you want your child to be what she's just going to be naturally. And then you face these pressures from your family to send your child to church, even though you don't go to church and you don't express any belief in that. And it's something that I plan on talking a little bit more on my on my channel. But just to kind of talk to what you were saying, MathPig, it's something that I regret allowing to happen back then. I wish I had been stronger.
Can I just step in and say that MathPig and Rage, you all have very similar experiences here, and it's kind of interesting to see how it happens because I know MathPig says that the religion over there is very cultural. It's not it's not necessarily a religious thing so much as it is a cultural thing in Northern Ireland, whereas over here it's very very devout. So did you all, in comparison to one another, as far as what the children are being exposed to in the churches, can you all lay that out for us a little bit?
Well, mine hasn't been in a couple years, but it was Sunday school. It was hell belief, and she actually had a couple nightmares about that. And it was a Baptist church. That's all of my family are Baptist of one type or another. So it was a lot of Sunday school, hell belief, fire and brimstone kind of teaching when she went. And that's eventually, my mom got sick and she passed away. And once she got sick, she stopped going to church. And that was my way to kind of stop it for my daughter. So I was able to stop it at that point.
My daughter had an experience, not at church or anything, but at public school. There's a group of kids, who were, the see you at the pole, like they're really kind of like the kid that I was. Well, I mean, she was only in first grade, and they came up to her at lunchtime, and they were about to put their trays away, and they walked up behind her and they said, do you believe in Jesus? And she said no, and they poured the rest of their pint of milk on her over her head, and she was just in tears. Just came home just in tears. She's been crying the whole day over it because she thought that they were her friends, and they stopped being her friends because she didn't believe in Jesus.
Yeah, I fear that. I fear, like my kid going to school and repeating something she hears me say, and then her being ostracized for me. That's a horror that I have almost every day she goes to school.
I mean, you do have a dirty mouth.
This is why the
Yeah, and I try so hard to keep her separated from when I'm doing this. But here, like, now that she's older, she's 10 now, she's interested, and it's hard to keep her away like it was when she was 8, you know, so it's getting a lot harder. Yeah, and it's a struggle.
That's making me think of a story now. Whenever I was younger, before over here you have to have a national insurance number to work and stuff, and whenever I was young, I went to people might not like this, but it was a pig slaughterhouse, and my mother used to work in the canteen and fed all the workers. And I would go in and do the tills and make the breakfast in the morning during the summer, you know, help out and stuff, earn my pocket money, so to speak. And there was a lady there who was a very staunch Protestant, and a lot of the workers lived in the south. So a lot of the workers in the place came across the border, worked there, and they were all Catholic. And she did get up on the table. She did proselytize to these people, and she did ask my mother to take me, you know, can I take your son to church and things like that there. My mom was like, no. Like, my mother's a Christian, but when it comes to fundamentalists, it's like, no, you're fucking mad. It's, you know, so there is limits over here. We do have the fundamentalists, but I feel like a lot of people over here, you know, in the UK, in Europe in general, sort of take it or leave it. You know, it can go either way depending on where you're raised, depending on what's going on. You know, if you've got a lot of weddings going on when you're growing up, you might be in a church an awful lot. It's just what happens, you know.
It's completely different in England because I know a lot of my family are Irish, and in Ireland, religion is really important. In England, it is take it or leave it. You either will go to church or you won't go to church. But if you go to church in England, it's pretty much, you might have a tambourine, you hang around church, you do a few songs, and then you bugger off home. There's no pressure in England with religion at all. We are way past it.
Yeah, I think I remember making more fun of one of my friends who went to church on a Sunday because he couldn't stay out on a Saturday night to get drunk, and that's why we made fun of him. Not because he was going to church, but because of the fact he had to go home, so he was up the next morning to do something with his family. You know, it was nothing to do with the religion. So, you can miss out in the crack. Go on the fuck out.
Yeah, we're well over it. A lot of you guys are from very new countries. Like, obviously, America is a very new country. You're a long, long way behind us. We've moved on. You're better at everything else, but
in saying that though, I always had an awful lot of respect for America. And this is looking from an outside point of view.
Much.
Yeah, like I think we're way behind on most things.
Well, we are, the people on this panel are, but
you know, I look at America though, and I know that I did grow up in a sort of generation where Florida was amazing. It's the pinnacle of holidays and going to America, and these are wonderful.
Florida?
Yes.
That's what we were brought up with. Florida was everything for us for America.
Yes.
Florida was,
California.
Space Shuttle was, and Disney was.
Yeah, I'll go with that.
Yeah.
That's what we were taught. We knew nothing of the rest of Florida.
I would have thought California too.
No, we're like trying to stop Florida off. Like, if you would like to have Florida, though.
I fucking hated Florida, Maya. I actually went to Florida and fucking stayed in the Sheraton Hotel complex, like a block or 2 blocks up from Disneyland, and spent big money and all, and went there in the middle of August where it was thunderstorm. Yeah, I didn't know because August is summer over here. I know I should have went in here, but everybody keeps telling me that. Thunder season.
But it's like steroid summer in Florida.
Yeah.
You know, I went in the middle of thunder season. We don't know, but I've totally lost my point because we're just talking about Florida, man.
Yeah.
No, I've lost it. I've lost it.
Indoctrination.
No, this is what I was saying. Yes, the idea of what America is, and I'm not trying to promote, you know, the nuclear family. I'm not trying to promote the American dream. But the way that America was laid out, you know, if you could wipe the slate clean and go back and get rid of all them evil white men that want to take control and all of that and fucking money and capitalism and shit like that, and take the Constitution and look at the Constitution as just what it is, compared to what we have to start off with in England, compared to what we have to start off in Ireland, and looking at the progress that we've made, it's maybe taken us 500 or 600 years and you're only at 200. But I do think, and not to be fucking user privilege, but you have a slight advantage because they've seen the mistakes that what Europe was doing, and that the idea, at least, you know, that The goal was there. I try to do what I can for the community here. We all fuck up. But I think the Constitution, if you just look at what the Constitution is, not how it's been abused, there is an awful lot of good there.
Yeah, sure. But you have to have people who are willing to uphold it.
A lot of nice ideas.
It should have been built with a regularly scheduled ratification where they go through and look at all the stuff in it.
I think the problem with the Constitution is it wasn't written by a fucking 21st century lawyer. So it's, you know, it's so colloquially written. It's so open to interpretation, you know.
Well, yeah, and that was by design, though.
Yeah, yeah.
Because they wanted it to be able to span time. And how would they know that Mitch McConnell would be born?
Did they not have turtles back in them days? I thought they used them like water bottles. Dave will tell you about that.
Someone like Trump would be born, though. They foresaw people like Trump. They relied on...
But like the entire 500 other people backing him, I don't think they factored that in.
No. Well, not to make this a political stream, because I don't think there's a right-winger here amongst us. God has some things to say that people would poke him on every now and again, but, you know, he's God. He can do whatever he wants, like.
I mean, I'm not going to comment on that other than, yeah, I can do what I like.
The ratings got to be gone.
Have you ordered a new guitar yet?
It's hard to separate religious indoctrination. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah.
No, go for it.
I was going to say it's hard to separate, in the U.S. specifically, it's hard to separate religious indoctrination from political issues, because we have a party that pushes for religion in school. We have Betsy DeVos, who wants to give government money to charter schools, which are, a lot of those are religious organizations and things like that.
See, this is the problem, because it has been
their issues into the Christian right to get their vote. So yeah, a lot of it is, it's like I was saying earlier, like if we didn't have our politicians enabling them, we'd actually have a snowball shot in hell for like keeping them moderated. But I mean, it just, I don't know.
No, you see, I look at it now, but you see, when you look at the Constitution, the fact that it was there to separate church and state. You look at England, you look at Ireland, right? You look at Ireland, and with the exception of Northern Ireland, the way it has been now, but me and Rib have discussed this before, people came home in droves to change and to vote on the laws for the LGBTQ to be changed in Ireland. They came home from England, from Spain, from America, wherever they were doing their studies. There was a giant rush of people of that generation to come home and vote on this. And Ireland has been a Christian state. And this thing with Ireland, especially with England as well, because it's ingrained in the government, you can then, if there's a mass of people agreeing with something, change the law. And the law and the church are combined. Dave's going to shout at me for everything I'm saying here. But in America, the fact that it's separated, that means that the group of people that are under the umbrella of Christian, that are under that, they are a voting power.
Well, no, I mean, it's different here because it's a civil rights issue. So it had to go through the Supreme Court, because we would have been the opposite. Like, I think when DOMA was overturned, I don't know that we could have gotten a national vote to do that. And it's like, even now, I think people are just letting it go, but I don't think that people are 100% there. It had to go above the people to get passed, at least at this time.
Yeah, but that's because of the way America is, because it's such a fundamentalist state, because it's, it creates pockets of it works against itself. And I'm not going to say implement a fucking nation state church, but the fact that it's not, and they're all separate, and everybody can apply for their own this, that, and the other, and America being what, 350, 400 million people?
Well, I mean, but we have the religious right electing themselves into Washington.
Yeah, but because it's been separated, that gives every religion the same sort of rights, which is a great thing. Yes, well, I totally agree with that. But each religion can then create its own echo chamber, can then create its own...
I think that's in theory, MathPig, you would be right. But when it comes to the Constitution, and especially the separation of church and state here in the United States, it's all a fucking illusion. It doesn't matter. It doesn't exist. It never has. They never cared. And we do not have equal representation. You look at our Congress, it is primarily Christians, and most of those Christians are fundamentalists. You look at the right wing, which is, we have a two-party system, so half of the political power is divided into the evangelical base, which is a very, very powerful lobby. And
but because it's separated, because the church and state, because the church and state is separated,
they can basically preach from their pulpit and tell their parishioners who to vote for.
Yeah, but because it's separated,
it's crazy right now.
I'm going to just make this point, Dave, right? And then I'm going to shut up. I'm going to try and get my point across and try and save myself from looking stupid. But because it's separated from church and state, that person who is making the laws, who is influenced by their church, you can't say to them, you're not allowed to vote on what you think of because of your church, because it's separated. Where in other countries, we can say, right, well, you're not allowed to do this, and it's all tied together. So they can, your freedom of speech, the fact that you are Christian, I'm not allowed to encompass upon that. Would that be correct?
Encroach.
Thank you very much, Junk Shop. And on that note of being corrected, because I'm not English pig, I'm going to shut up again.
No, I mean, but it's like he's saying, yeah, it works in theory, but like theory.
It's all theory.
Everything you said, it's an illusion because it's not what's actually happening.
There's too many loopholes that there's no way to regulate.
Right.
Why are the Catholic Church backing what is clearly an evangelical takeover? Because it's not in their interest. The Catholics are going to get absolutely screwed if the evangelicals manage to complete where they seem to be heading.
A lot of the Catholics,
yes, but it's the exact same sort of philosophy that leads broke ass people to vote for billionaires. They have allowed themselves to fall under the illusion that it will help them, and they're not far-sighted enough to realize that they're going to get royally screwed when their guy takes power.
Yeah, and real quick, and I'll let you go, Brainbug. To Dave's point, that might explain why, like, most Catholics tend to vote left, and I've always wondered why. Because most Catholics are against abortion, and yes, they still tend to vote left. And that what Dave was saying could speak to that. They might, because I mean, it's very apparent what the evangelical right is trying to do. That is their way to oppose them.
There's a weird amount of. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, you're okay. I was just going to say that a lot of the Catholic voter base, a lot of the population that's Catholic, that's voting, is Hispanic. At least in a lot of states out west, and they're not going to generally be voting for the conservative base. But
it's not necessarily true.
You don't think so?
No, I mean, I know they want to. It's just that the Republicans that have been placed have been against them. They would prefer to vote Republican. No. And actually, I know in Florida, at least, they're saying that Joe Biden is not getting the Hispanic vote.
Well, what I had originally was going to say is that a lot of these people are going to be single issue voters and Catholics with the abortion stuff. Yeah.
Well, you see, that's the thing. Bringing it back to the topic. Go on ahead, Dave. Go on ahead.
I was in the middle of saying something on the thing we were talking about rather than the topic.
Where's the button to remove me? Hold on, I just kicked my.
Well, no, I mean, no, you're right. We should probably stay on topic because that's like the thing to do. We don't want to like Mr. Batman this whole conversation.
To slightly divert it back then, because obviously, because Trump came out today with his patriot education thing, basically his commission that's going to put patriotism at the center of education.
Yeah, the 1776 education platform or whatever the hell he's calling it.
Right. This just to me sounds like it means that you cannot have truth. You're saying you want to put a spin on everything. It literally turns everything you're teaching into indoctrination.
That's what it's for.
Trump's making
I
war
I
on
understand that people want to like hold out more hope for America than we actually deserve. Like, no, they want us stupid. Like that, it's just very apparent at this point, and we're more useful to them as idiots.
Yeah, stupid people need to rely on a government. Strong-minded people rely on themselves.
That's very divisive right there.
There's no other way to interpret what's going on.
Yeah,
It does feel that way.
I totally agree with what Maya's saying. It feels like they've been attacking education in this country for 20 years. They've been trying to, like they're literally trying to insert creationism back into the schools and force it. It's pretty scary. They limit sexual education and then cry about abortion. So yeah, I mean,
that's another thing about indoctrination.
It's all indoctrination, right?
Is look at overpopulation at the minute. You know, and I'm not going to say anything bad about having babies and wonderful, and we're all pro-choice, like. But if there was more sexual education in the world, there would be a lot less teen pregnancies and a lot. You know, we need to improve sexual education, but they don't, because it's just they go down the route of abstinence, because the Bible says and indoctrinates you into abstinence is best.
It depends on the area. So yeah, the red states are more abstinent only. You have the blue states, or especially the cities, that will teach more comprehensive sex ed. And what the studies I've seen are showing are that teenagers are still having sex at equal rates, but you have the abstinent only teens having more instances of teenage pregnancies and abortions than the blue state kids who are getting the sex ed.
Dave knows an awful lot about the stats about who's watching porn. We should ask him.
I got a better sex education back in the 90s when I went to school than what my kids or my oldest is the only one that's had that course than what he got in 2016. So, I mean,
I don't doubt it.
That's and that's in Missouri. Of course, in Missouri also they're one of the states that passed the laws to limit abortion stuff, and it's really has that conservative edge to it. But you don't, and that takes the forefront, that takes the main stage, while on the back side of things, they're taking this education out of schools. They're taking what was a comprehensive sexual education program and whittling it down to just a reproductive health course is what it comes down to. That's basically all that he got was a reproductive health course.
Same.
Lucky to get that.
Yeah, I live in Michigan, where we had Betsy DeVos destroying the education in our state for 10 years before she ever went national with it. So like, she's hated here. You go to hospital here, it's DeVos Hospital, and they destroyed our school system, the sex ed programs and everything else. And now that she's gone and doing her thing nationally, it seems like the schools are starting to rebound a little bit, and hopefully things are going to get better.
If you don't want kids to get pregnant, don't do sex education. Go back to like the British 1960s or 70s way, and don't talk about it. Let kids find out when they're old enough to do it. And because if you educate children and say, you know, this is how you have sex, this is how the safe way to do it, kids are going to go out and try it because kids are stupid. and if you look anywhere all over the educated world, more children get pregnant now because of sex education. And it was unusual when I was a child that somebody at the age of 14 got pregnant or 16 got pregnant. That was frowned upon. But if you want to teach people about shit like that, then people are going to get pregnant because kids like me.
Well, you see, I think I'm going to disagree with God. I'm going to disagree with God. Not that any of our atheists here would disagree with God, but society is not what it was then. Society has been sexualized, and a lot of younger people, you know, so it's...
There was loads of the teen pregnancy rate then was through the roof.
Yeah.
No,
education is key, man. Education is key.
It wasn't, Dave. Honestly. If you got pregnant years ago and you were under 16, you'd go off to a nutter home. You went to a mental hospital.
No, you went
because
to a
there was something wrong with
nunnery
you.
in Ireland. If you were
Yeah.
pregnant under the age of 16, you get sent to a nunnery. Where then, whenever the
Correct.
child was born, they took it out the back and they drowned it in the fucking septic tank. Over 500 dead babies found in a fucking Catholic convent in Ireland within this last 10 years. That's what they used to do.
I absolutely agree with you. That was an absolute.
Do you agree with that, or
thing.
you agree with me?
No, I agree with you. And that fact.
Okay.
That is a true thing that really happened. That really happened. All them children got drowned. However, now, if you get pregnant now, you get a government grant and you get a house. And now everybody's pregnant. Oh, phone.
Yeah.
Phone call.
Yeah, that doesn't happen in America.
Yeah, that would be nice.
I think
Yeah.
God spent slightly too
Maybe
much.
it's different where God is from.
Well,
Yeah, I mean, in Utopia, I can totally
Yeah.
see what's happening. However, in the States, teen pregnancy was at an all-time high in 1996. They introduced sex ed into the schools, and it's dropped to rates, from way before that. I don't know. In the States, I don't know what happens in the rest of the world, but in the States, sex ed is working.
well, until they
We've
take it
got
away.
Yeah.
abstinence only here where we are, and we've also got, coincidentally, I'm sure, one of the highest rates of infant mortality in the entire fucking country. Correlation does not equal causation, but good goddamn.
Well, I mean, yeah, but it's in the states that put abstinence only education, and I don't know if it's in the schools or like just to the teenagers. I'm not really sure what they do. I've always been in progressive states. I can't say I had the best sex education, that there was, but it was there. And we just are seeing lower numbers in the states that teach sex ed than the states that don't.
Oh, agreed.
And again,
from what I've read.
Maybe it has absolutely nothing to do, even though it's a 1-to-1 correlation. Maybe it's absolutely
Well,
nothing to do with it.
there are plenty of peer-reviewed studies, as you mentioned, that do support that fact, and it's true. But another thing that I've been researching and finding out, like red states, especially really deep religious red states, I think Georgia, Alabama were a couple of the ones. My former state, North Carolina.
Mississippi.
They will actually limit the amount of contraception that is available in their stores. So they're limiting contraception to their populations. Yeah, I've been looking into it. It's still new, but like they try all of these different techniques. They close down abortion centers. I think in Texas, there's like one abortion center in that entire state.
One or two.
Yeah, I mean, it makes it impossible for you to, and abortion centers don't just commit abortion. It makes it almost impossible for you to get the medical shit that you need as a woman sometimes in a lot of these states. So they find different ways to attack it. And it's not just such sex education. And it all stems from that Christian indoctrination, that male patriarchy, male domination of women.
Yeah. And you're right. It is in Texas. They do only have one. Ours here in Memphis, our choices of Memphis is closer to some parts of Texas than the lone last standing abortion provider in Texas is to some women in Texas. We've had people have to make a fucking pilgrimage, pardon my French.
I could cure it all. I could stop it overnight. Young people getting pregnant.
In Northern Ireland, we are run by the DUP and Sinn Féin, and the DUP is the swaying power, and they're Bible Belt bashers and all the rest of it. We had no abortion up until this year. The reason being that the government closed fucking down, and England just stepped in and went, you know what, you're all Dixon behind the time, we're just going to make this law. And because we'd no government to say fuck all about it, they couldn't stop it. Within this last 2 weeks, we've had the very first, I think it was a lesbian marriage in a church. A couple, they were allowed to do it, but now it's officially in a church. But they do leave the stance on the church. They don't say, the church must. They leave it up to the church. But obviously, you're going to find a church that you're accepted. If you're a Christian,
you don't have a city hall.
Pardon?
They can't just do it at city. I don't know.
Yeah.
City
Oh
hall
no, yeah,
or-
they could, but they're not. Yeah, there was no, but what was referred to as what was it, Dave? It wasn't a marriage because a marriage was officially in a church.
A civil union, yeah.
Civil union, yeah, right. Civil partnership is what they called it over here. Yeah.
Well, we had those here too for
A while, yeah.
decades,
Yeah, but they're now allowed to do it in a church, and that's because they've stepped in and and stepped over the top of that. And you have this whole idea again, pushing what they're saying is pushing of the rules. Even over here, we didn't have abortions. Only rich people could get abortions because it was available in England. So if you wanted one, you could just fly over to England and get it. But because of the religious indoctrination, the way that the laws were set out over here, because of that, if you had a need to, or to get an abortion, you had to go to England. You had to find a flight. You had to find money. You had to find, and it was again bringing the poor down and rising the rich up again.
It is still probably closer than some people in Texas have to get to their one abortion clinic.
I got a question for you all in Europe over there. So, in our education system, there's indoctrination just built into it. It's not necessarily religious indoctrination; it's nationalist indoctrination. Do you all experience that? I mean, I could show you like an American history book, like a school history book that would just blow your mind about how.
Well, again, with American capitalism, is it not that Texas has the buying power, and Texas is so religious that the books are made to appease Texas, so then all the books are. I know I'm fucking broad brushing the whole idea, but
that was for the science books, especially with keeping evolution out of the science books and stuff. I was more referring to the nationalism though that we get in our history.
Yeah, history.
We have a certain level of it, but it tends to be based around the royal family. We've got a lot of history in the royal family that we learn about. I mean, I was fascinated to this. It's only last year I discovered that there was an English armada that was destroyed. Right? We throughout my entire upbringing, it was talked about the Spanish Armada that came to invade England, and how we beat it back, and the famous thing was Nelson beat it back. Right? No one ever told us that a couple of years prior to that, there was an English armada that we sent round to attack them that got absolutely trashed. So from that perspective, they definitely orchestrate what history we are taught.
Yeah, no, they did the same here.
We're not as bad as Germans, though. They teach a completely different history than actually really what happened. We tend to tell a story.
all guests' views are their own views. All guests' views are their own views.
Yeah, I experienced that too, for sure. Like growing up in the South in the United States, like you get a whole different history than people in the North and stuff. Like it's separate states. I grew up in South Carolina. Like some of the things we learned about South Carolina history, like these people were world renowned, like honorable fighters, or like I'm a teenager. I'm like, oh, you never heard of Swamp Fox? You know what I mean? Like you don't know exactly who that is, but
I do.
Yeah, nice. But yeah, it's
Thank you for joining, by the way, Ethan. Appreciate it.
Yeah. You guys have been a little all over the place, so I'm having a hard time like jumping into this one. But
No, sorry. I heard that the South had its own history classes, like a lot of Southern pride, and like I really didn't understand the whole Confederate flag thing, and they're like, oh no, it's all built in, like you out of the cradle, and I'm like, God.
Well, if I can bring it back to indoctrination and ask Ethan
this is all part of indoctrination.
Yes, shh, Ethan, you're a Christian. Did you have an existential crisis when you were growing up, or you left the faith, or have you always been a Christian?
No, I mean, I like grew up going to the Catholic Church, but then just kind of like we were never very serious, and just kind of it was never a big thing. Growing up would never have gone to church by myself. So as soon as I went to college or whatever, like there was no
existential crisis, but just I didn't give a fuck, and then you find Christianity.
Pretty much, I just like didn't think it. I didn't even. I mean, I would like think about stuff like that, but I just assumed like religion was all just a waste of time or whatever. Like
to make it very simple and to just bring everything down and simplify things, there's Brian in the bottom corner who's a cradle atheist. Do you think if you had the same experiences as a cradle atheist when you got to whatever age that you were when you refound Christ and found yourself in the position you are now, do you think you would have looked at it differently being a cradle atheist, or do you think that there was that, as Maya has pointed out earlier, that wiring in your brain to believe these things, that wiring in your brain that's been there from so long, even though you didn't cure, you knew it existed?
Oh, for sure. Like indoctrination, even like not even indoctrination, because like I said, my family wasn't really Christian, but just like growing up in America, it's a Christian country or whatever. Like as soon as you have any sort of like existential, sort of like religious experience, obviously you just assume it's Christianity for sure. So, like if I grew up an atheist, I probably would have thought it was some other sort of spiritual type thing or whatever, for sure. If that's what you're asking, I think.
It's funny the way you actually worded it. I find it funny the way you worded it, because you're like, I grew up in America, a Christian nation, and it's supposedly a secular nation, and I grew up.
Not to say,
and I grew up in a Christian nation, but then in Europe, it's the complete opposite. Even though it had the opposite effect, so to speak.
Yeah, not to say Christian nation like we're founded on Christian, but just like if you speak of some sort of religious experience, more than likely you're talking about Christianity. That's really all it is.
One thing I do find now, especially here in the UK, is a lot of us, well, I'm not going to put me in that because according to Dave, I'm an atheist. Some definitions, I'm an agnostic. I just say I'm an agnostic atheist to keep the man quiet. But I find a lot of people that I interact with now, because religion is starting to die away. Religion is overall as a worldwide thing starting to die away. We're improving our generations. They're thinking more logically. But I find that a lot of people are still being spiritual. They're still leaning on that spiritual nature, because the foundation of the supernatural, the foundation of, the sort of needing faith to believe in something and giving it credibility, that still is that's a foundation for Christianity. It's also a foundation for spiritualism. Yet spiritualism is a wee bit more open. You can want to be, go to church when you want to be, and pick and choose what you want to be. But it still has the foundation of the supernatural. It's still, not so far as dogmatic beliefs, but it leaves you open to being taken advantage of. It leaves you open to being taken advantage of fortune tellers, of people who are good at reading your body and your hand signals and things like that, and have now taken £100 off you.
Well, there's always going to be stupid people.
That's it, done. Thanks everybody for coming tonight, and on that we
I think that that just speaks to the overall indoctrination, because a lot of atheists, I think, are former Christians here in this country. I'm meeting more and more that were born atheists, and they're an interesting people to talk to, because they think totally differently than the way that I think about things. But I think for like atheists, a lot of us are former Christians, and we were raised on spirituality. And when we leave the religion, that's one of the things we miss. So a lot of, like a lot of polytheists that I've met were former atheists that went to polytheism. And I think that's just natural. You try to fill that void and you try to find more acceptable gods. I think for me, it was different because, when I left Christianity, I tried other religions and I rejected those too. Yeah. And eventually I just gave up any real need for spirituality. Although I still admit, I still practice some Native American shit. And maybe that's me filling that void as well. I'll sit there and I'll beat on my drums. I'll burn some sage. I know it doesn't mean anything supernaturally, but it calms me. And maybe that's still just me filling that void that I had been indoctrinated into as a very, very young child, and that I still miss at 23 years later.
MathPig, what did you do? You got people in the chat discussing the definition of atheism.
I did no. That's not me. That's a totally different channel. Totally different channel. Personally, for me, making the reference that Rage is talking about, whenever I originally left Christianity, now it was a young age. I was only up in the seat, dog. Lie down. I'm not letting you out. I'm streaming. When I was at a young age, and I went through that anti-theism stage, and then sort of led into goth, all that sort of I hate God shit, and listening to Slayer, God hates us all, and annoying people and stuff. Then you sort of grow out of that a wee bit. You go into deism, pantheism and things like that, and you work through these stages. hopefully you can get past that last stage of being spiritual where you pick and choose what makes you feel good and actually get to the atheism. But I find that a lot of people in this country don't take that final step. Don't take that, no offense, Ethan, don't take that last, cop themselves on and think about that last week thing, because it's comfortable. It is nice to think that there's definitely going to be something afterwards and have that comfortableness.
Oh, I hope I'm wrong. I hope that one day I die and I rock up to some pearly gates and a guy is stood there, he's going, "You have been really bad," and I can say, "I'm sorry about that," and he'll forgive me, and I'll go, "That were easy. I've lived my best life." And he's let me in as well because I said I'm sorry.
Well, you just say sorry on your deathbed. That's it. Get somebody to throw some holy water on you. And we're being really disrespectful to Ethan here. Would you like to put anything in, Ethan, before I make myself sound like I'm more of an asshole?
No, I don't really. I mean, you don't sound like an asshole at all. But it's just like funny how you're like all kind of presupposing like you're. I mean that's fine, but it's just like, that last step or moving forward with all these things. Like, I mean, I'm not saying I'm right, you're wrong, but it just seems, I don't know, it's like different. I'm not normally.
Well, being from a personal experience, as
many atheists,
from a personal experience, as I've said, I use the term agnostic atheist because I will never make the statement to say I know there's nothing. Yeah. I will never make that statement because I don't. And there is always that small little inkling, and there's a few things that have happened in my life, hence the original Math Magic Pagan name, and I'm open and leaning towards, the scientific and the evidentialism and all these things that have happened in my life. I'm 95% sure that there's probably an evidential reason for it. But there's just that 5%, anybody says that they're sure about everything is lying to you.
Oh, I'm sure about some things.
Yes, you're allowed to be sure about some things.
I'm pretty sure it's Thursday.
No, it's technically Friday. You're wrong. It's just turned 1 minute past 12. It's now Friday.
Well, and I'm in no way trying to invalidate anybody's religious beliefs or say that their religious beliefs are indeed wrong. I'm with MathPig on that. I like to call myself an agnostic atheist now. And what we're speaking to is we both have left Christianity, so there is these different levels and stages that I think is just a natural progression for atheists to go through. One of those stages is anti-theism. And if you want to see it in its rawest display, just go back 3 years on my channel and you will see that in its rawest form, because I was very, very angry when I first got on YouTube. And I have progressed and evolved, and I try not to do that anymore. And it's these different stages. And I think he's speaking to that last stage of just totally letting it all go, because it is hard. I mean, especially if you learn this at a very, very young age.
No, for sure. And Christians definitely experience some of that same thing. I know, and it didn't last very long for me, but when I first became a Christian, it was like, oh, this is you're all about it, oh, I was just so stupid and everybody else is stupid, and I wasn't that bad, but a lot of people do get really bad. And I have progressed. So too, it's just funny to listen to you guys talk about moving forward. And I'm looking at my own life, whoa, I'm moving backwards compared to them. I don't know. It's just a weird thought as you were talking. So.
But at the end of the day, not to dismiss any religious experience or anything that's going on, because it always boils down to personal testimony. Regardless whether you're an atheist, regardless of whether you're a Christian, a Buddhist, or whatever the fuck your beliefs is, it comes down to personal testimony. It comes down to your life and what you've been through. And at the end of the day, I don't give a shit what Spartan, believes in. I want to find out why he believes in it, and I want to talk to him about why he believes in it, and have that discussion. I don't give a fuck he's a crazy Christian. There's worse ones out there. Crazier ones out there. Hell, we've got God right above him, for fuck's sake.
He's right beside me in StreamYard.
I was going to say Richard, he's barking. But anyway, thanks for having me on. I'm going to have to go. Because,
yes, we'll be right. Hey, do you want to hang about for the last 5 or couple of minutes? We'll get any questions from the chat. We'll be rounding up now anyway. How long have we been going? I think we've been going about an hour and a half or so it'll be close to
something
rounding up.
That.
Pardon?
Oh, sorry, I just said something like that.
Yeah, something like that. Well, you just voted yourself in. Junk Shop, what have you got coming on? What's happening? And do you have any questions or anything you'd like to make a statement on before the stream?
The place where I stand is the question of, does it do harm? And in my opinion, Christian indoctrination, and in particular the hell belief, does active harm. It damages people, and that damage can be lifelong. And that's what I stand up against. I talk about why I stand up against it and what I am standing up against on my ongoing series, Improv Bible Study, Mondays, Wednesdays, Fridays at 2 p.m. Central Time.
Well, going by the stream, God, you're next. Any trips to McDonald's coming up?
Obviously, all I do is drive around in my car at a minute. I've stopped making videos, just drive around in my car and go to McDonald's. If you don't want to watch that, do not subscribe to me. That's it.
In saying that, man, YouTube isn't real life should still be getting regular views. At least once a week, I meet a person that takes YouTube far too serious, and I send them your video. So it should at least be getting regular views.
It gets like a couple a week.
Yeah, see. So, under God, we have Brian. Brian, what have you got coming up?
Yeah, so my schedule is, so next Friday, I believe, I just kind of set the date while we were on the stream with David Worley, so I'll be going on his podcast there. And then Saturday, me and Santi are sitting down again with Dragons in Genesis to do Monsters in the Bible Part 2, where we just discussed some of the monsters in the Bible. It was really fun. We really enjoyed it last time, so we wanted to do a Part 2. Who knows what we'll get into this time. And then other than that, I have not this next Tuesday, but the Tuesday after that, I'll be back on The Perspective again, where we take calls with supernatural claims and kind of look at those. So
yeah, you're the new modern Matt Dillahunty.
Yeah.
You're the new modern Matt Dillahunty with your call-in show.
Oh yeah. Well, we've been taking more like ghost and alien kind of calls, but we do get the God claims and stuff. So whatever.
Dave, what have you got coming up?
Critical questions tomorrow night, 9:30 UK.
4:30
EST.
We have Maya. You'll always see Maya in around Discord.
Yeah, and I think B's putting it together, or I'm sorry, what is she, the family?
Yes.
She's
Beth.
putting together a girl thing Saturday. Still trying to lock in the time, but I believe it will be 7 p.m. Eastern. So check her out. Amanda turned us down.
Yeah, because she just didn't have surgery or anything like that.
It doesn't have, no, she's perfect. She doesn't need surgery.
Next, we have Spartan. Spartan, what have you got coming up?
I don't really have anything planned right now, but I'm sure something will come up. So
You haven't interviewed me yet.
Say what?
You haven't interviewed me yet.
You're right. Okay, you want to come on my channel? We'll make.
We'll make that. We'll do that someday next week.
All right. Okay, yeah, but something will come up. So follow me on Twitter. But that's the best way to hear about stuff.
And last but definitely not least, Rage. What have you got happening?
Well, I have been spending all day off and on watching the movie Cuties, and I've got a couple I've got a Christian on stream crying about this movie, and there's this narrative about this movie. So I didn't want to see it, but I sat down today. I've been watching it. I've been taking notes. I've got 5 pages of notes. So tomorrow, I'm going to have a conclusion on this movie that Christians seem to be melting down about. And that'll be fun.
Is that after my wee girl goes to bed so I can sit down and watch that?
Yeah, it's usually a 12 noon stream tomorrow. So that'll probably be the time, Eastern time.
Perfect, man. Well, on that note, I want to just say thank you to everybody for coming up tonight. A bit worried we wouldn't have enough people because it was a wee bit short notice to get the topic and stuff sorted. But I really enjoyed tonight. It was a great conversation. Lots of topics talked about. And thank you to the people watching. Thank you to my Patreons for always helping out with the channel. Next thing we need to get now is a fucking camera and maybe a better mic. But yeah.
We need another 200 subs.
I need another 200 subs. Yes, everybody that's watching, hit the fucking sub button. All right, like I'm so close to 1,000. And if you haven't, Amanda released a video with Dark Matter. She's now 1,300 subs. Everybody's better than me. I feel really soft and not important, and nobody loves me. So hit that subscribe button. Do all the YouTube things. Really appreciate you all doing that. And on that note, everybody, thank you.
Hit the like button.
Hit the like. No, don't hit the like button. Hit the subscribe button. Shut up, Maya.
Everybody subscribe.
On that note, we will oink. We will out. And oh yes, no, I have nothing happening. No, boring. Yeah, no interviews.
Oh, it's Secular Sunday for Amanda coming up.
Yes, next Monday. Monday week, I think it is. Monday week, Amanda has Secular Sunday coming up. So definitely check that out. There's going to be some big names. Brian, you made me look like an asshole. As always, thank you very much. So we will talk to you later. Bye-bye.